It is good to be back. I missed you all. It is a whole week not doing the show. That is the first time, I don't know, since my honeymoon that I've taken a vacation like that. It was great with the family, but it was tough because I wasn't here with you. And still, I have concluded I need to go on vacation more often. I go back to the old country, Italia, for 1 week. And President Trump scores arguably his biggest win ever at the Supreme Court, certainly his biggest win ever in Congress, and might now get his head carved onto Mount Rushmore. And the craziest part of all those wins is that multiple polls are now showing that Americans are less patriotic today than they've ever been. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. A boy has been discovered being raised by dogs in Thailand. This is really providential. It's kind of sad for the boy, obviously, but it's a weird resonance historically because I was just in Italy, Rome, founded by two boys who were raised by a she-wolf. Now, I hope we get to that story. It's a really interesting story. First, though, I want to tell you about Balance of Nature. Go to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code Knowles. You have heard me talk about Balance of Nature many times before. That is because Balance of Nature, fruits and veggies, is the most convenient way to get whole fruits and vegetables daily, especially if you're focused on creating a healthier, happier lifestyle. Nature is pretty good at giving us the nutrients we need through our fruits and veggies. So Balance of Nature takes fruits and veggies, freeze dries them, turns them into a powder, and puts them into a capsule. You take your fruit and veggie capsules every day, then your body knows what to do with them. Balance of Nature is just one ingredient of a balanced lifestyle. It has no intention to replace a healthy diet, exercise, sleep, or any other healthy habits. It's intended to be used in concert with those other healthy habits. I was just recently back in the Bel Paese in Italy, where you get all sorts of nice, good fruits and veggies, and I was sleeping decently well, and it was a nice fit. Now I'm back at it, baby. I'm on the grind. I'm not getting those delicious Italian verdure anymore. Good thing I've got Balance of Nature. Go to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code Knowles, KNWLES, for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer, plus get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com. Promo code Knowles. Before we get to any of the big political stories, I do have to get to these horrific storms in Texas. Obviously, I was out of the country, and I was barely checking my phone. I didn't really want to see all the political news. I'll catch up on it later. But then you saw this horrific storm, massive floods. 82 people confirmed dead so far. That number is almost certainly going to rise. I think there are 40 plus people still confirmed missing. That includes dozens of girls from a Christian summer camp. I mean, just absolutely horrific. So we all pray for everyone and for the rescue efforts and all the rest, for the families, for the dead. One thing we don't do is react in the way that some really prominent people on the left have been reacting, which was totally predictable, but it's repulsive and nauseating. And it gets to a real problem at the heart of liberalism. I'll just use one example. This guy, Kyle Kulinski, who is a fairly well-known internet person on the left, but he's been around for a while. He writes, with the flooding in Texas and all of those precious little girls dying, look at this, what a mocking phrase, all these precious little girls dying. It's important to remember this was 100% preventable. Elon and Trump slashed the National Weather Service and massively reduced the number of weather balloons in the country, destroying our ability to accurately forecast severe weather events. I've personally experienced forecasts being way off multiple times already. They have blood on their hands, and they should be arrested for the deaths of those little girls. Okay, so none of this is true, really. This was not 100% preventable. We'll get to that in 1 second. Elon and Trump slashing the National Weather Service, as Michael Schellenberg points out, the National Weather Service got this right. The issue is not the National Weather Service. There do seem to have been errors in sending out alarms at the state level, but there's no evidence that the National Weather Service failed at all. There's no evidence that just now in the first year of the second Trump term, finally meteorologists get forecasts wrong. Obviously, that's happened so frequently that it's been a punchline for as long as there have been meteorologists. They have blood on their hands. Listen to the sanctimony, the self-righteousness from this guy, Kyle Kulinski. 100% preventable. Now, we know this isn't true. We know that this can't be attributable to any supposed cuts made under the second Trump term because of Hurricane Harvey. So the confirmed death toll so far in this awful storm is 82. Hurricane Harvey killed at least 68 in 2017, many years before the supposed Elon Trump cuts to the National Weather Service. What would the left, what would Kyle Kulinski blame that on? Before that, let's go back a little further. Tropical Storm Allison killed 55 people in, what was it? That was 2001, I think, right? Well, long before anyone had really considered President Trump a serious presidential candidate. Well, let's go back a little further than that, because the other thing that people are going to blame this on is climate change, global warming, whatever. How about the Galveston hurricane, where the storm surges and the floods killed between 6,000 and 12,000 people in 1900, long before any global warming, climate change, long before any of the things, long before Trump, but long before any of the things that the left is going to blame this natural disaster on. A reaction like Kyle Kulinski's, and I don't mean to just single him out, there have been plenty of people on the left who have reacted this way. This reaction entails a lot of vice. You have to have a lot of personal vice and sin to have this reaction. But ultimately, ideologically, it's about a denial of original sin. That's really what this is about. The tragedy has to be preventable because the world can't be fallen, because there can't be any such thing as original sin, because there can't be any limits on human potential. We must be able to control everything. We must be able to prevent every bad thing. We must be able to perfect society. It must be true. That is the premise of liberalism. But it's not true, because it's a fallen world. And you couldn't have prevented any of these things. Not in 1900, not in 2001. Not just this past week. Bad things just happen sometimes. And bad things happen to good people. That's called theodicy. And the great thinkers have dealt with this problem for millennia. But modern liberals in particular, modern people generally, but modern liberals in particular, cannot deal with that because there cannot be such a thing as original sin. Bad things can't just happen. We must be able to stop it. We are human beings. We have the potential to totally control the world. We can make ourselves gods. That's the theory, and it's false. I remember after that awful shooting at Covenant School here in Nashville, when the trans-identifying person shot up the little kids at the Christian school. There was another one of these guys, like another Kyle Kulinski, David Pakman. He's another one of these liberal internet guys who doesn't make himself out to be some radical or some fringe person, makes himself out to be a mainstream person. And he came out, he tweeted out, he said, it's so strange that there was a shooting at a Christian school because they always pray. Maybe those little kids should have prayed harder and they wouldn't have been killed. That was his reaction. Of a guy who considers himself a mainstream leftist. And there was the same kind of sanctimony, the same bile in the reaction, but also the same sanctimony, as if to just blame Republicans or something. It couldn't just be that bad things happen sometimes. But of course, you ask all of these people. You ask David Pakman at the shooting in Nashville, you say, well, what would you have done to prevent this? Maybe they would say gun control. We had to pass a gun control law. There's not one gun control law been proposed in the past 3 decades that would have stopped any of these shootings. You might say prevent trans-identifying people from getting guns. He almost certainly wouldn't agree with that. You ask Kyle Kulinski or these libs, you say, what would you have done to prevent the flood? I would have funded the National Weather Service. There was no problem with the National Weather Service. Well, I would have had more carbon tax credits. I would have had more electric vehicles. You would have had what? You would have had what? Nothing that you've proposed will stop natural disasters. Wouldn't have stopped Hurricane Harvey. Wouldn't have stopped Tropical Storm Allison. Wouldn't have stopped the Galveston hurricane. Wouldn't have stopped any. There has been flooding. There have been natural disasters. There has been evil and sin and death in the world since just almost the beginning. Almost. Since we got booted out of the garden. And there are things we can do, obviously, to protect ourselves, to try to cope and to comfort people who deal with the suffering that life entails. But this ain't it. And what it comes down to is a fundamental error in the modern ideology. Liberalism, most notably. The hubris, the pride to say we can prevent evil. We can just totally stop it. It'll never seep in. We can perfect it. We can save the world. That's the error. And these people certainly can't, and none of us can. Well, there's one person who can save the world, and he has. I'll move on, but just one additional terrible reaction to these tragedies. You see this one all over TikTok. People who almost come very, very close to saying that the victims of the flood deserve it.
There's people in it. Oh my God, there's so many people in it.
I know I'm probably going to get canceled for this, but Camp Mystic is a whites-only girls' Christian camp. They don't even have a token Asian. They don't have a token black person. It is a all-white, white-only, conservative Christian camp. If you ain't white, you ain't right, you ain't getting in, you ain't going, period. And I think that context needs to be said in this matter. It's not to say that we don't want the girls to be found, whatever girls that are missing or whatever right now, but you best believe, especially in today's political climate, if this were a group of Hispanic girls, especially with them being in East Texas, it should be most likely Hispanic. If this were a group of Hispanic girls out there, this would not be getting this type of coverage that they're getting. No one would give a and all these white people, the parents of these little girls, would be saying things like they need to be deported, they shouldn't have been here in the first place, and yada, yada, yada.
If this is your reaction to a natural disaster, to any kind of tragedy, something's going wrong with you. And if you have any introspection whatsoever, you should recognize that and say, that shouldn't be my reaction. Maybe there's something wrong in the way I'm thinking about things. Because what this girl is doing is part of a broader liberal impulse, which is to make victims into perpetrators and perpetrators into victims. That's always the case. If an axe-murdering, illegal alien, rapist, jaywalker goes out and just starts running people over in the streets and stealing sneakers while he's at it, the left will find a way to make him into the victim. They'll say, well, he was failed by society. Well, there's systemic inequality and racism and sexism, and so he's really the victim. And they will, left to their own devices long enough, find a way to make the victims into the perpetrators. Well, they perpetuated a system of white supremacy and capitalism and imperialism, and they lived on the stolen land taken from the Chickasaw, Hockey, Choctaw Indians, and so really they had it coming. They'll always do this. They have this contrarian impulse that goes all the way down. And ultimately, since we're speaking of first things, ultimately what it comes down to is that the devil's the good guy. This is the radical liberal, radical romantic reading of Paradise Lost, which makes Lucifer into the good guy. Lucifer, when he falls from heaven, he says, well, the mind is its own place and it can make a hell of heaven and heaven a hell. Better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. Which is as clear a summation of the liberal ideology as I've heard. The mind is its own place. We can do whatever we want with it. We don't need to be constrained by anything, not by family, not by tradition, not by morality, not by reality. We'll just make our own worlds. We'll make our own identities. We'll make our own realities. He's really the good. He's the rebel. He's trying to liberate himself from a system. And so anyone who transgresses, anyone who subverts the law or custom, in the liberal inclination has to be the good guy. And so it's not that this comes from nowhere. It's not just, look at these dumb, stupid liberals or something. There is a kind of logic to it, but it comes from the subversiveness, which begins with the premise of liberalism, which is that man will make himself into a god. We'll forget about God. We'll either deny God altogether or we'll just ignore him for all practical purposes in our lives, and we'll make ourselves into gods. No kings, no gods, only man. That's what it comes down to, and that's how you get that reaction. And those reactions from the TikToker and Kyle Kulinski and David Pakman the last time there was a horrific tragedy, Those reactions are wrong. And if you have that reaction, you're wrong about a lot of things and you should change your mind. Now, I do want to get to some good stuff because there are a lot of big political wins. President Trump had his biggest win at the Supreme Court, maybe ever, and definitely his biggest win at Congress ever. And Elon is trying to start a new political party, many think to destroy the Republican Party. We'll get to all of that, but first, I want to tell you about Everyday Dose. Go to everydaydose.com/Knowles, Knowles. If you feel like juggling expensive supplements is getting less and less affordable, then Everyday Dose will be a lifesaver for you. Everyday Dose transforms your morning coffee into a powerhouse of vitamins, minerals, and amino acids, all in one affordable cup. Just 30 seconds to prepare, and you are getting your caffeine fix, plus all the nutrients your body needs. One delicious, juicy cup. One simple solution. Everyday Dose is not just coffee, it's coffee plus benefits. They've infused their 100% Arabica beans with lion's mane, chaga, collagen protein, and brain-boosting nootropics for clean, sustained energy without the crash or the jitters. You can choose between their mild coffee plus, which is light, smooth, gentle on sensitive stomachs, or Coffee Plus Bold. That's the one I recommend, which is rich, full-bodied, medium roast with an extra energy kick. Both deliver the same functional benefits and undergo rigorous third-party testing to ensure you're getting the best quality. Your brain and your body will thank you. I absolutely love Everyday Dose. You know, look, the coffee in Italy is good, but is it Everyday Dose? I don't know. Not quite, actually. So you can get 45% off your first subscription order of 30 servings of Coffee Plus or Bold Plus. Get Bold Plus. You'll also receive a starter kit with over $100 in free gifts, including a rechargeable frother and gunmetal serving spoon, by going to everydaydose.com/Knowles or entering Knowles at checkout. You'll also get free gifts throughout the year. Everydaydose.com/Knowles, 45% off your first order. Is it all right to racially profile? Is there some evidence that the world might be flat? These are only two of the really hard-hitting questions in the latest episode of Yes or No with Xavier de Rousseau. What a great French name that is. Check out this teaser.
Michael, do you think you deserve a soft A N-word pass?
I like standards. I like taboos.
It's a little ghetto.
On my mother's side, I'm Sicilian and Calabrese. And the Sicilians, kind of African.
Are you black?
Watch the full episode now on the Michael Knowles YouTube channel. For the uncensored ad-free version, subscribe to DailyWire Plus. To some marvelous political news. Look, I got to catch up on a week of stuff, so I'm going to have to fly through this, okay? But major win for President Trump. Trump v. Casa Incorporated. The upshot of this decision is random district court judges don't get to stop the entire presidential agenda at their whim. How many district court judges are there? I think something like 700. And for the past 6 months, anytime a district court judge, some random lib appointed by Barack Obama or Biden or something, anytime any of them want to gum up the wheels of Trump's administration, they issue some stupid ruling and then they presume to be able to stop the executive branch from its functioning, which is completely ludicrous. You might as well not have an executive branch if any one of the 700 district court judges can just stop the president from doing whatever he wants. Can stop the president from doing what he should based on whatever the judge wants. You might as well not have a president at that point. So there's this case. It was broadly about injunctions to stop deportations, but the substance of that doesn't really matter. The upshot is the judges don't get to just push the executive around willy-nilly. Ketanji Jackson, the newest judge on the court, big liberal judge from Harvard Law School, as her supporters remind us all the time. She writes, "It is not difficult to predict how this all ends. Eventually, executive power will be completely uncontainable, and our beloved constitutional republic will be no more." So if the judges don't get to stop the president from enacting his agenda, then we'll lose our constitutional republic. But it actually gets worse. Somehow her dissenting opinion gets worse. She writes, As I understand the concern in this clash over the respective powers of the two coordinate branches of government, the majority sees a power grab, but not by a presumably lawless executive choosing to act in a manner that flouts the plain text of the Constitution. Instead to the majority, here's the kicker, instead to the majority, the power-hungry actors are, ellipsis, parentheses, wait for it, and close parentheses, ellipsis, the district courts. Now, I know if you're just driving and listening to this, you might not be able to fully appreciate how stupid this looks in the text of Jackson's dissent. This woman, she's a Supreme Court justice. She went to Harvard, undergraduate and law school. She wrote in a Supreme Court opinion, like any glib, quirky millennial girl, instead, to the majority, the power-hungry actors are ... Wait for it. ... And the district courts. Before we get to one last bit on Justice Jackson, here's what Amy Coney Barrett had to say in response to Jackson's semi-literate dissenting opinion. Amy Coney Barrett, who sides with the court's majority here and says, yeah, random district court judges don't get to shut down the White House whenever they want to. She writes, this is so brutal. She writes, "We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary." So you get the cat fight on the Supreme Court, but it's not even fair to call it a cat fight. It's like a mangy, little, frowning, furrowed brow cat versus a lion or a tigress or something. A lioness or a tigress. It is not fair to compare these two people, which is why you get the dismissive opening from Barrett. She goes, "We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's dissent," which is completely incoherent and barely functional English. We're not going to dwell. Let's just not dwell on that so as not to embarrass her, as if to say. However, and then she gets to the point, which is really simply stated and not all that catty or nasty, where she goes, Justice Jackson is worried about an imperial executive, the lawless, tyrannical president without his power circumscribed. Meanwhile, Justice Jackson is embracing an imperial judiciary, where forget about the president who's elected by all the people through the Electoral College, but really can claim national representation. Here, you got any random district court judge appointed by any kind of president can overrule the president of the United States. Doesn't make a lot of sense. The conclusion from this, one, this was obviously the right decision, 6-3 decision, simple enough. The other conclusion here, though, is that Ketanji Jackson is not the sharpest tool we've ever had in the old Supreme Court shed. Let's put it that way. I'm trying to be charitable, not engage in railing or reviling. I'm just trying to put the issue straight here. Not the brightest crayon in the box, not the, how many other metaphors are there? When conservatives point this out, the liberals will inevitably respond and say, do you know that Ketanji Jackson has not 1, but 2 degrees from Harvard? Oh, yes. She went to Harvard. She was a Harvard undergraduate and then went to Harvard Law School. Yes, that's true. That is an indictment of Harvard. That does not speak to the skills or capabilities of Ketanji Jackson. That merely speaks to the decay of Harvard. This woman, in her confirmation hearings, was asked by Marsha Blackburn, what is a woman? And she laughed and said, I'm not a biologist. This woman should not be on the Supreme Court. She does not have the goods to be on the Supreme Court. Let's put it that way. She doesn't write English well. And as David McCullough, the great Yale historian, points out, to write well is to think clearly. That's why it's so hard. She should not be there. And she probably shouldn't have graduated from Harvard. I mean, look, Harvard these days has a remedial math course for its freshmen. So Harvard has been a long time in falling. And I love that Trump has declared war on Harvard. But It's not, when the libs respond, they say, well, do you know, and forget about Jackson. I don't even mean to just only harp on Jackson. Whenever they say, you know, such and such public expert actually went to Harvard or Princeton, or such and such comes from the National Institutes of Health. Yeah, I know. I know that those credentials should mean something, but they don't anymore because people like this come out of them. So the institutions, because of their insane ideology, have compromised their own credibility. So now when you say so-and-so has a double Harvard degree, that immediately makes me suspicious. Okay, that doesn't convey the credibility you think it conveys. That makes me raise an eyebrow. And now if I wanted to lose an eyebrow, you know what I'd shave it with? Jeremy's Razors. Go to jeremy'srazors.com. If your razor company celebrates every country except America, it's time to switch to Jeremy's Razors. 5 stainless steel blades that destroy stubble and corporate pandering, a precision trimmer for clean lines and tight corners, and a lubricating aloe strip, plus hair and body care essentials made without sulfates or parabens. In honor of Independence Day, you can restore your daily ritual to its former glory for 25% off. Go to jeremy'srazors.com, jeremy'srazors.com. So, big win for Trump on the Supreme Court. Then also huge win in Congress. The legislative achievement that will occur this year, the only one that could possibly occur really this year, has occurred. Trump's big, beautiful bill has passed. I know some people were opposed to it because it's got a lot of spending. Yep. Yeah. That's how bills are passed now. You might not like it. You might think it might be leading us into insolvency. I agree with you that it's leading us to insolvency. But that is how the government works. You can bang your head against a wall and hate reality, but that's how it works. So as the Treasury Secretary said when I interviewed him, Scott Bessent at the White House a couple of months ago, I said, what happens if the big, beautiful bill doesn't pass? What happens, if you can't pry enough Republicans to go along with it? And he said, well, then we've failed. This is pass fail. This is not, okay, we're going to go back to the table. We have basically one shot at this. It's everything we want to get done this year. The funding for the border, the funding for the military, everything. Making the tax cuts from 2017 permanent. If they didn't, it would be the largest tax increase in American history. We just have to get it through. Either we get it through or there will not be any legislation this year, any meaningful legislation. That's it. And he got it through. Trump made it happen, and it had to happen. And some people are going to bemoan that there's too much spending, and they'll attack this for all sorts of different reasons. They'll say, well, there's too much pork barrel spending. First of all, I don't really think there is pork in this bill. There's a lot of spending, but I don't think there's really pork in this bill. And pork also doesn't matter. John McCain made pork barrel spending, all the little extra add-ons that the congressmen have to put into these spending bills in order to get their votes, to bring back money to their district, all this little pork barrel spending, it doesn't really matter. John McCain made it an issue in 2008 because John McCain supported massive entitlement spending. And if you really wanted to cut the federal budget, the only way you could do it effectively, yes, you take on waste, fraud, and abuse. Trump has done a good job on that. Elon has done a good job on that. Sure, I guess you can cut some pork barrel spending, but really the only way to do it is entitlement reform. And John McCain didn't want to reform entitlements. So the only way he could position himself as a fiscal hawk was to say, well, I'm going to get rid of pork barrel spending. But it doesn't really matter to the bottom line. And anyway, this bill doesn't really have pork in it. So they'll attack it for that. They'll attack it for not cutting entitlements. But again, it does, in fact, streamline certain entitlements to get people who should not be on these programs off these programs, to include, for instance, in Medicaid, a very minor work/education/volunteer requirement. When the libs tell you this is going to kick millions of people off healthcare, what they're saying is either it's going to reiterate the illegality of foreign nationals, illegal aliens receiving some of these federal healthcare benefits. But also what they're saying is, it's going to make people who receive massive federal subsidies, it's going to make them at least try to kind of sort of pretend to get a job or an education or just do literally anything ever. So if that's going to kick people off the entitlement programs, you have to ask yourself, why were they on the entitlement programs to begin with? In any case, it does in some ways streamline that, makes it more efficient, but it's going to be attacked for a million different reasons. It had to happen. It's the only way that Trump could in any way advance his agenda through legislation. If you don't like that, then you can try to structurally change the system. But that is how the government works. To inveigh against that would be like inveighing against the notion that we're no longer a yeoman republic as envisioned by Thomas Jefferson. We just, we also don't live on planet Zebulon 7, but reality is reality, folks. You got to accept it. If we want to improve it, we have to first accept what reality is and deal within those limits. Now, some people are quite happy with the bill, like my friend and my congressman, Andy Ogles. Andy Ogles is saying that this is such a great bill and Trump has done such a good job. His head needs to be carved on Mount Rushmore. And this is Andy's exact words. I am asking Secretary Burgum, Secretary of the Interior, to put Trump on Mount Rushmore. Given the scale and scope of President Trump's recent achievements, especially the impending enactment of the Big Beautiful Bill, the historic act that will ignite America's golden age, it is essential that we immortalize President Trump's likeness on Mount Rushmore. And he goes on to compare Trump to Washington, Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt, so on. It's great. You can see there's a picture of it that Andy put out where if you added Trump's head, and not just his head, really his whole bust with the tie, Brioni suit, if you added what it would look like on Mount Rushmore. And everyone is laughing. It's kind of funny. I mean, it's a funny idea. It's not totally crazy. It's not totally crazy. I told you I was in Italy last week. I was seeing friends of mine that I had not seen in 16 years last time I was in Italy. And we're there and in speaking Italian. These friends of mine don't really speak English very much, but they don't pay super close attention to American politics. You know, they're true Italians, but they pay a little bit of attention. And so they were asking me about Trump. And I was explaining my view on Trump to someone who to people who don't really pay super close attention. And I said, you know, and these friends of mine had mixed feelings on Trump. I said, how do I explain this to people who don't live in America, who don't follow this closely, who don't feel super tied into this? I said, let me just view it from the historical perspective. Whether you love him or hate him, Trump is an extremely significant figure in American history. Whether you might hate him, you might love him, you might pretend to feel indifference toward him, he is a really significant president. And sometimes when you're living through history, you don't realize how historic it is. But this guy got elected to the top job in the world after having never served in political office and having never really run for president or for any office. A little bit he ran in 2000. This guy took over the Republican Party. He destroyed two political dynasties, the Clinton dynasty and the Bush dynasty. He rewrote a lot of Republican orthodoxy in the Republican platform. He was booted out of office in odd circumstances, went out into the wilderness, became the second president ever to be elected to a non-consecutive second term after he was shot in the head, which happily only blew off a little piece of his ear, and had another assassination attempt on him weeks later. And then he comes back into office having won the popular vote as a Republican for the first time in 20 years. That's historic. That's historic. So we can laugh. We can all laugh. It's kind of funny, the picture Andy posted. You know, there's Trump's head right up there next to Lincoln. It's not the craziest thing. So then the question is, what would justify? If you say, well, it's not justified to put Trump's head on Mount Rushmore yet, what would justify it? To me, the clear answer is mass deportations. Some will not want to hear it, but that's the answer. Trump could justify having his head on Mount Rushmore if his legacy is that of a truly transformative president. In retrospect, Clinton, George H.W. Bush, did he matter? Like a little bit, not really. He presided over the fall of the Soviet Union. That's interesting. But no, he's not. Reagan seemed transformational. George H.W. Bush, not transformational. Bill Clinton, not really transformational. George W. Bush, maybe a little bit more than Clinton because of the wars, but not really transformational. Barack Obama, a little bit more so, but Joe Biden, certainly not, was barely there. Trump could be. If Trump's legacy is, I cut taxes a lot and I made business a little easier, he won't be transformational. He could be a good president, but he wouldn't be transformational. If Trump deports the many millions, possibly tens of millions of foreign nationals who are illegal in this country. If Trump rewrites America's relationship with the world on trade, on war, on immigration, if he does those things, he will be transformational. And love him or hate him, he might deserve a spot on Mount Rushmore. You've had the weekend to think it over. Now it's the time to act. Today is your last chance to join DailyWire Plus. Get 6 months free. Sign up for an annual membership. We'll cover half of it. That includes our #1 documentary of the decade, Am I Racist?, Jordan Peterson's powerful new series, Parenting, and Ben's no-holds-barred late-night show, Ben After Dark. You get it all ad-free, uncensored, and on demand. Go to dailywireplus.com and get 6 months free right now. Okay, my favorite comment. When was this from? You know, we had a lot of content going out all week. I hate to leave you all high and dry. So this was on some video. I don't even know which one. From Kevin Kent, 3663. Your church shouldn't celebrate Independence Day, lol. Meanwhile, my parish prayed for our country and Independence Day at Mass. Yeah, you should. Of course you should. This is something really crazy that in modern ecclesial communities and groups that call themselves churches, even though sometimes it's hard to tell if they look like a church, you get all sorts of wacky heresies. But one of them that's quite pervasive is the notion that we shouldn't be patriotic, that somehow patriotism is idolatrous or wrong. That could not be further from the truth. Patriotism is an extension of filial piety. Patriotism is an extension of your love for your family, which is a good thing. And in fact, honoring your mother and father is a commandment from God, and it's virtuous. And patriotism is too. You should love your country. I have much more to say about that. But let's move on because there's too much going on. Maybe we'll get to that before the end of the show. I got to fly through this stuff, folks. A big hiccup here on the question, is he going to be a Mount Rushmore president or is he not going to be a Mount Rushmore president? This raised a lot of eyebrows, including my eyebrow over the week. President Trump floating amnesty for farm workers.
Tom Homan. And we're working on legislation right now. Susie, right? We're working on legislation right now where farmers, look, they know better. They work with them for years. You had cases where, not here, but just even over the years, where people have worked on a farm for 14, 15 years, and they get thrown out pretty viciously, and we can't do it. We got to work with the farmers and people that have hotels and leisure properties, too. We're going to work with them, and we're going to work very strong and smart, and we're going to put you in charge. We're going to make you responsible, and I think that that's going to make a lot of people happy. Now, serious radical right people, who I also happen to like a lot, they may not be quite as happy, but they'll understand, won't they? Do you think so? Madam Secretary, look at you with a white hat on. Do you think they'll understand that? You're the one that brought this whole situation up.
Now notice a relatively subdued response from the crowd when President Trump acknowledges. He says, look, we love our radical right people, but they're not going to like amnesty for illegal aliens who work on farms. But, they'll understand, right? And there's a subdued reaction from the crowd. And the reason is this. As I've said before, Trump gets it right 99.7% of the time. But I'm not just the cheerleading section for Trump. I really like the guy. I really like him a lot, as you know, and have for 10 years. And I think he's done a lot of great stuff. I think this could be a perilous objective for him. I don't think this is necessarily the right course to go down. I see why. He's going down it, because he's got friends, especially in the business community, who say, I'm losing all my workers. Go after the who aren't workers. Go after the who are just sucking off welfare. Go after the workers who are criminals. Go after the workers with the face tattoos. 11 million to 16 million illegal aliens in this country. If you want to actually start to rectify that situation, you can't just deport the ones with face tattoos. You do kind of have to deport Abuela. You do, eventually, at least. You can't have just random carvets. Well, if you work on a farm, as if what? So work on farms can't commit crimes? As if they haven't committed crime. I mean, first of all, there have been farm-working illegal aliens who have committed horrific crimes like in the country. But also, they've already committed a crime by coming over here. And the question is this an issue of justice? Is this an issue of national sovereignty? Well, if it is, then we have to enforce the law. The real error, I think, that is lying in wait here is the notion that mass deportations are a radical right issue. They're not. Mass deportations are a majority mainstream political issue. And that's very hard for us to understand because for most of our lives, the two views that you could have of migration were mass illegal migration, or mass legal migration, but maybe not so much illegal migration. But both of the views you were allowed to hold were much, much more immigration. And that's not what people want. That's not what people voted for. Trump campaigned on mass deportations. Full stop. He campaigned on it. He was clear as day. He didn't lie to anybody. And people voted for that. And he won the popular vote. I understand that the White House is probably getting a lot of pressure from farms, from the hotel industry, from farms which are largely corporate at this point. Very, very few small farms left in America. I think you got to resist that. Most people want mass deportations as a matter of national sovereignty, as a matter of the rights of citizens, as a matter of justice. On this issue in particular, I'd say give the people what they want. Now, speaking of what Americans want, Elon Musk is sick of the Republican Party. He had a little bit of a falling out with his buddy. The former buddy-in-chief has left the White House, and he is now starting a new political party. It's called the America Party. And what does the America Party believe? Elon retweeted this. Says, America's party will be focused on reduce debt, responsible spending only, modernize the military with AI robotics, pro-tech, accelerate to win in AI, less regulation across the board, but especially in energy, free speech, pro-natalist, centrist policies everywhere else. Are you down for this? And the right is freaking out. They're saying, oh no, you can't start a new party. That's going to destroy the Republican Party. And oh no, this is going to undermine MAGA. And oh no, Elon, please, no. I'm not concerned. I love Elon. He's great. I'm very grateful to Elon for all the good that he has done for our country. If Elon wants to start his party, it's fine. The party will most likely pull more votes from Democrats than from Republicans. But it probably won't pull very many votes at all. Do you know why? Because there are like 0 people who want this in the country. I want some of these things, some like pronatalism, that sounds great. But this party is essentially fiscally conservative, socially liberal. It's not quite that simple, but that's basically what it is. It's the thing that college kids said 15 years ago. I'm actually fiscally conservative, socially liberal. Do you know how many people in the country are fiscally conservative and socially liberal? 0. That's how many. Statistically, 0. I'm not saying it like there's going to be one guy in the comments. Oh, you're okay. Statistically, 0 people want this. I have a chart to show you. Let me show you my chart. I came prepared. Where's my chart? I don't see my chart. Here it is. It was my second sheet. Okay. The 2016 electorate. You have here social identity dimension, most liberal to most conservative. And then you have here the economic dimension, most liberal, meaning left, most conservative over here. Here is where the Republicans sit. Here is where the Democrats sit. Here is fiscally conservative, socially liberal. This is the America Party right here, okay? There's no one there. You know who's there? You know, every single person who's there has a podcast or a blue check on Twitter. So it's confusing because you think for a second, you're like, well, all these people I'm seeing on the internet say that they believe. Yeah, but that's a very small sample size. No people are for that. Because it's a contradiction in terms, by the way. Social liberalism creates all sorts of fiscal hazards that, you know, when people are like doing a bunch of drugs and engaging in weird sex stuff and just broadly being irresponsible. If you're socially irresponsible, that you're going to be fiscally irresponsible too. So that's one of the reasons for it. This will not threaten the two-party system. Trump seems very upset about it. He posted a tweet. I'm saddened to watch Musk go off the rails. It's a train wreck. We're running smooth as a machine. This is a threat. I get it. It's always a threat when anyone comes at you in any way in politics, but I'm not all that concerned. Not all that concerned at all. Okay, last bit to get to, though it's related, is a number of polls that come out around 4th of July on patriotism. And so I'll look at Gallup's right now, but there are a bunch that have come out. Some a little bit contradictory, but broadly speaking, one conclusion we're seeing is Gen Z, Zoomers, are the least proud generation to be American. You know, I love the Zoomers. In some ways, I feel spiritually Zoomers. So what's going on here with the Zoomers? Well, there's polarization, first of all. The left Zoomers are really far left. The right Zoomers are really far right. Most Americans are proud to be American. 58% said they're very or extremely proud to be American. You might say 58%, that's good. That's not good. That's bad. That's a record low. Americans are less patriotic today than they've ever been, basically. Last year, 67% of Americans said that they're very or extremely proud to be American. This splits on party lines, as you would expect. 36% of Dems are very or extremely proud to be American. 92% of Republicans are very or extremely proud to be American. From 2021 to 2025, less than half of Zoomers, 41%, and this is adult Zoomers, have been extremely or very proud to be American. That's compared to 58% of millennials. The millennial numbers are higher, but worse, or higher, but still bad, worse than the historic average. 71% of Gen X is very or extremely proud to be American, 75% of the boomers, and 83% of the silent generation. So why is this? Do people just become more conservative as they age? Maybe. I don't know. I think there are still generational gaps that will persist, I think. Is this because America's gotten worse? That's what we hear. This is what you hear from the left and what you hear even from people on the right, including people I respect. They'll say, well, in this country, you used to be able to afford a home on a single income and you could have a lot of kids and cars and stuff, which is true. The homes were a lot smaller and cheaper and they only had one car and you didn't go on lavish vacations and you didn't go out to eat fancy dinners all the time. And so, but sure, point taken. Sure. Wages have stagnated. Okay, sure. But that's not why. That's not why people are less patriotic today. It ties in with what we were talking about earlier. Patriotism is a virtue. Love of country is a virtue. It is an extension of filial piety. You know, it's that old dichotomy when people say, well, my country right or wrong, or my country only when right. What is it? Do you love your country right or wrong, or do you love your country only when right? The correct answer is right or wrong, it's your country. Do you love your mom when she's wrong too? You should. Do you love your dad when he's right? You should. Patriotism, like patria, like pater, dad. Patriotism is a virtue. And in defense of the millennials and to an even greater degree the Zoomers, that virtue is mocked in their education from the earliest age. So they don't know any better. It's not that they're consciously rejecting their education and virtue. They never got it, or they got the opposite of an education and virtue. They're told from America's awful, it's terrible. The history books they read on America are Howard Zinn's execrable nonsense. So that's what they're taught. And as a result, they're not patriotic. That is a flaw in the individuals. That is a generational and individual flaw. It has nothing to do with America. Plenty of people have been patriots living in countries that are much worse than ours. If you are not a patriot, that's your problem, and you're doing something very bad, and you should improve yourself. And it's not necessarily your fault. You might have just been taught wrong, but get with the program, kid. It's bad. Love your country. It's your country. Unless you want to be a big lib. This is what as we say on the show a lot, liberalism comes down to screw you, dad. It comes down to 3 words. I hate my dad. That's what liberalism is. And by extension, that's why you see the decline in patriotism. As the miasma, as the fetid, toxic miasma of liberalism spreads across the horizon, you get the I hate you, dad, to I hate you, country, because you didn't give me enough hugs, and we didn't play catch enough, and you didn't give me a house and 2 cars, and you didn't actually in GDP increase, but wages didn't. Shut up. You should love your country because it's the right thing to do. How do we turn it around? We educate people into patriotism and other virtues, by the way, which involves not fiscal conservatism and social liberalism. It doesn't involve any liberalism at all. It involves being normal and doing good things and conserving any of the good, the abundant good that we still have in this country. Happy 4th of July. Today is Music Monday. The rest of the show continues now. You do not want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, KNWLES at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.